I used to think that I was the strangest person in the world. But then I thought there are so many people in the world. There must be someone just like me who feels bizarre and flawed in the same ways that I do. I would imagine her and imagine that she must be out there thinking of me too. Well, I hope if you are out there and reading this, know that I am here and I am just as strange as you.
So what's it like living in the city? It's dynamic. It's where things happen. It's where livelihoods happen. So therefore, all of us move to cities. Where would I rather be? In a small town.
You know, holed up in a cubicle, not knowing whether it's summer or winter outside.
Urban life is sort of pathological in many ways. The whole logic of urban life has put us into a pace that is unnatural to our bodies and our inner selves.
It's horrible. I hate the traffic, I hate the chaos. I mean, if I had my way, I would live in a farm somewhere.
When I go to quiet places, they're really nice for 3 days, and then I start missing my city. So it's just like any relationship. You know, you hate it, but you love to hate it.
That it will take you in when you want to be here, and it will reject you the moment you want to step out. It will let you go. You want to leave, leave. You want to come, come. And it's a great relationship. You know, it's like an ex-boyfriend who will say, "Come back."
What surprised me in my journeys with Kabir was so quickly he started asking me to look within. And I realized that my impulse to make peace outside was equally a mirror or a reflection of my impulse to make peace within. As a seeker, as an incredibly shifting, fluxing, changing person on a day-to-day basis. My name, Shabnam, means dew in Urdu. I feel I inherited it despite being born in a Hindu family at a time when it was okay to name your children Urdu names, even if you were born into a Hindu family.
Your point of view is yours and no one else's. And that's why I picked up the camera. I started photographing people. It was my way of understanding them. It was simplified them. I think I romanticized them. And it was nice to see them in a frame versus seeing them in real life. And it was fun. And the more crowded it was, the better it got. And the drunker they got, the better the pictures were. My name is Anusha Yadav. And the meaning of my name is sun's first ray that touches planet Earth.
I don't know what it's like not to be an independent woman. I mean, I really don't. Right? I've always been an independent woman. It means making my own decisions, living life the way I want to live it. It means choosing my path. Rekha Menon. Rekha Menon Menon, actually. Headstrong, confident, risk taker, adventurous.
When I was a girl, I thought that the moon followed me home every night because everywhere I'd turn up, I'd just be like, the moon's here. The moon's there, no matter, I was in Singapore, oh my God, the moon's here as well. So I was convinced that the moon followed me everywhere. I'm a visual storyteller, and what that means is that I tell stories through drawing and children's books and walls and tempos, and I paint pretty much any surface I can find. I animate, I create iPad apps for kids, and basically try and find any way of expressing a story visually. My name is Shilo, Shiv, Suleman. The first name is Hebrew, Shilo. Shiv is Hindu, and the third is Muslim, Suleman.
To be very honest, in the early years, I had absolutely no time for myself. My life revolved around my kids. There was no me time, so to speak. That was how it was in the early years for me. Then gradually, when they started going to school, when they started becoming more independent, that is when I had time for myself. My blog completely changed my life. My name is Preeti, and Preeti means love. A lot of my friends tell me it totally conveys what I am.
In a large way, I find that there's traditional parts of me. On the other hand, I feel there's a real rebel, you know? So I feel like I'm constantly seeking to stretch boundaries. So whenever I see the boundary line, I'm like, why? Why isn't it 2 meters ahead? You know, who put it there? I'm Vidya Pai. My name means either knowledge or education or some sort of combination thereof.
Growing up is about developing a kind of a hot skin with a certain amount of sass. If you can do that, it works everywhere. You just can't constantly feel vulnerable and falling short. There have to be times when you say, this is as good as it can get vis-a-vis you. Whether it's the job, whether it's the children, whether it's shadi and cocktail commitments. I don't allow myself to get too pushed or shoved. My name is Swati Bhattacharya. What makes me special is that I'm an only child. And I was told in French, you never say it like the way you say it in English. In French, you say, je suis enfant unique.
I have finally realized I am a black cat. And everything I have learned about life, I have learned from cats. They are very clean. They have a lot of manners. They just don't go to anybody and everybody. They pick and choose. They're very intelligent. They're very smart. And they have a personality. I love hair, so I cut hair. My birth name is Sapna Moti Bhavnani. And my name apparently means dream. But if you ask my mother, it would be nightmare. Most of my mornings are spent with my cats and my plants. I don't usually speak till 11:30. I'm pretty much goose-out in all things green and furry. Yes, and then, yes, I will go and become Dr. Sapna and diagnose my patients who want lambe ghane baal, and I tell them, no, 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 kato, 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 nikalo, nikalo, nikalo. And yeah, so that's a day. And a lot of times, maybe if that's not the work that I'm doing, then I'm doing other work, which is writing. I write a lot, so I somehow like to put on my my iPod and go for a walk and just talk on the dictaphone, because I write a lot like that as well, as a narrative, and then come back and kind of put it all in words. So writing and hair take up a lot of my time.
I didn't want to do photography for the longest time, even though it was there in the family, and I was surrounded by photographers because I used to design books with them, art direct shoots with them, but it was somehow while working and after many years that when I decided to pick up the camera, it was because, and especially international photographers whose work I saw, that they each believed that they had a point of view. And I think that was one of the coolest things to discover, was that, hey, I have a point of view, and I am of 7 billion people, I am that unique person, and nobody else can see it. I think a penny drops. We are all told that in theory, but a penny drops that your point of view is yours and no one else's. So that's why I decided to become one photographer, that I wanted to show people what I see. And what I see is totally different from what everybody else sees, just like they see things that I wouldn't.
Oh, my life is some kind of a binary miracle. On one level, if you look at it cynically, one would think I've, just spot jogged all my life. I was in one zip code till I was 29. Then I got married and moved to the next zip code. And I've been in that other zip code. My life is New Delhi 16 and Gurgaon 16. It's the same zip code. I've been in the same office, where I started working. So I haven't done very many different things. But I've met very many different people. And I think somewhere, because I haven't moved too much, I'm pretty much the fixed leg of the compass for lots of people. And I like that. I like people returning, people going, coming back to me with their stories. So now while I like people who travel and take risks and do crazy things, now I've accepted that I haven't done that. So I'm kind of okay with being the fixed leg now.
So, right now you have caught me in Varanasi, in Kashi. Kashi means a concentration of cosmic light, which I found out yesterday. It's also called Anandvan, which is the garden of bliss. Except right now I don't see too many gardens around, so that's a bit ironic. I've been traveling around for now a month already, and I have another month of traveling left. So travel is a huge part of what really keeps me ticking. Mainly because I think when I'm traveling, it's almost like there's a narrative being written, So with each travel, there's a lesson that's being learned. I'm understanding something. I'm looking at something. And sometimes it's not as straightforward as like me looking at a building here and finding a motif that I like. But sometimes it's a much larger pattern that's unfolding over those travels that you discover in yourself.
It's been an interesting process because I've also been part of the women's movement. And for 15 years before I started work on Kabir, a lot of my films and radio work has been centrally located in the women's movement. I continue to call myself a feminist. And that's a lot about identity, right? It's about defining who we are as women in society. At the same time, what Kabir or the Sufis tell me is a dissolution of identity and arriving into a place of emptiness, of letting go of all your fixed markers of who you are that tell you who you are, and showing you that they are actually quite arbitrary. They are very fragile at some level. Yes, we all operate in society and social structures, and there is discrimination. There are rights issues that we need to all work towards. And parallelly, there is a battle happening between the flesh and the spirit, between us being embedded or located in narrow frameworks of thinking, and this yearning in all of us to be freer.
Sexual minorities' rights are particularly important to me among all the other things that I stand for, because I feel sex as a subject itself is, while it's such a natural function of human existence, it's such a subject that's like put inside a box, locked, put in a bigger box, sealed up, thrown in the ocean, tied up in chains, to the point that even a mere mention of sexuality gets people's panties in a bunch, I don't understand. It's nobody else's business who somebody takes to bed. It's nobody else's business who somebody finds attractive, or what they choose to do with that attraction, or how they choose to live. It feels to me like a massive human rights violation, and that's something that speaks to me very strongly.
Before I started blogging, I was painting, and then I started blogging. Basically, it was, I was kind of trying to reach out, because when I lost my dad, that is when I was now that's when I saw a very different side of people, which I had never seen before. Because no one is comfortable talking about death. No one wants to hear you weep and sob, and I myself didn't want to depend on people to. I had to cope with the grief in some way. So I started blogging, and I remember when I first wrote the post, I was very scared. So I started as PS, because I said, internet, I don't know what I'm getting into. I don't know who is going to read the stuff which I'm writing. And I think after about 2 weeks or 3 weeks, there was this person from UK who read what I wrote and who commented. He said, "I hear you." And I remember being so excited about getting that one comment on my blog. It's like, oh my God, someone actually felt what I am feeling. Someone understands. And I remember coming down the stairs very excitedly and telling my husband that, oh, somebody read my blog and commented. I couldn't believe it at that time. Initially, a lot of my readership came from the foreign countries. So that's when I realized that these emotions are universal. Everybody feels those emotions. Everybody could connect with my writing. And then one of my posts got picked up by a radio show host in the US, and it got the Perfect Post Award. That post was about my dad. For me to think that it all came from that one hesitant blog post where I had even hidden my name, that is something I find amazing. So that was the power of internet. For me, my internet changed my life completely.
I remember my father actually saying to all my aunts, saying, look, I'm going to make her capable enough that she can buy as much gold as she wants. And the second thing that he said was, which stayed with me at that time, was, look, when I give the raddi from my house, which is when I give the bottles and the old newspapers from my house, even for that I get some money. Is my daughter worse than raddi that I'm going to give her and give some money along with it? And those were the kind of things that stayed, and that's what shaped me. I mean, I owe it all to the two of them.
Coming from a conservative family was the best thing to happen to me, because it kind of brings out the rebellion and it makes you rebel, and then you become the person you want to become. So I kind of really thank them for being so strict. So by the time I was 13, 14, I was dating this man who was known as the local hoodlum in Bandra, and he had a motorcycle, and he taught me to ride this motorcycle. So I was the only girl back then who had also shaved my head, and I used to wear really short skirts and ride this motorcycle. And I remember everywhere I went, people would just look at me and start calling me names like Randi, because they thought that's what a slut does, rides motorcycles, apparently, whatever. And I think for my father, that was really difficult because, from being someone who always came top 3 and now I had dropped to bottom 3, and I was more interested in hanging out at social places and riding motorcycles and just wanting to learn more about life than just what was written in a textbook. And people back then, I don't think really, the city was not really nice to me, I would say. I think this is when I had decided that what the society deems as an Indian woman is so ridiculous. And just because I did not fit into that mold, they started, just spreading rumors about me and calling me names, which really affected my family. But for me, it was just now was the time where I did not want to be any of that. So that's when it started. It started when I was 14, 15, where I just decided that anything Indian or anything that what an Indian woman is supposed to look like, I am going to try my best to do the complete opposite of that.
My family is a bipolar disorder because it's partly very conservative and partly extremely liberal. So I got the best of both in some ways. There was tradition in it. There was, you could see there was a lot of culture because it was Jaipur. I was brought up surrounded by literature, with music, with dance. I learned all 3. My father passed away when I was 12, but it was a good relationship with my father. My mum is strained off and on, and but yeah, my father, I think he was the best man in my life. he taught me how to play chess. And and my mum, I think, with my mum it has been strained because I think I missed my father. And somewhere you feel she cannot compensate for that.
I remember as a child, I had read all those Enid Blyton books. And I remember I wanted to, desperately find a treasured map like those, like the famous five and all did. So I took this paper and I stained it with tea and I drew some map to make it look ancient, buried it, and I pretended to find it and I went to him. I said, Daddy, I found this map, and he never called my bluff. Of course, now it must have been so obvious at the splotchy job I've done. He said, oh, wow, it's wonderful. Let's look for the treasure. And he actually looked for treasure with me. So that's the kind of fun father he was. And we would go to the beach and we would try to catch him. And he would, he would run very fast and I would try very hard to catch him. And he was always doing stuff with us. So that's the kind of relationship which I had with him.
My parents, they worked really hard. They weren't physically there with me all the time. But I just knew whatever they're doing and how far they are going, it's all for me. I was at the center of their world. And I've grown up with that knowledge. And I have that knowledge at 44.
So it's worked out very nicely in the end. I have to give kudos to my parents for that. They're really very cool and progressive people. But I won't say that it came like a cakewalk. A lot of my friends say, how did you manage to do that? And I'm like, sometimes you have to push boundaries. It's not everybody, there's nobody in front of you cutting down the hedges for you to walk through,
On a completely personal note, I think I got something from both my father and my mother that I carry with me in my passion today. I think from my father I got a love of music and a love of the arts. And a kind of a relaxed must spirit. And from, not that I have that all the time, but from my mother, I got a lot of determination and a lot of grit and capacity to just like peechhe lago and do what you've decided you want to do.
My mother and father obviously didn't have a particularly great relationship. And finally he left when I was around, I don't even remember, like 9 or 10 maybe. And of course we're still in touch with him. But the kind of stronghold at home has really been always my mother. Which is why I don't ever, I think, also doubt the strength of women or what they're capable of. I went to a school with, 140 acres of trees where I would just wander around sketching, not having to worry about whether I had to go back to class in a hurry or whether I had to submit an assignment on time. And even if I did get into trouble for not submitting those assignments on time because I was in the forest kind of sketching, in the bamboo grove sketching, my mom would always stand up for me and say, but, even though she doesn't submit her assignments, I see her working every night. I see her painting every night. So that it doesn't matter whether she submits her assignments or not. As long as she passes through, I don't care. Which is actually such a great environment to have been brought up in. There's this kind of stereotype of like not being able to paint on the walls. I was always allowed to paint on the walls in my house. It wasn't even something that I needed to go and ask. So I think being brought up particularly by a strong, independent woman who used her art and basically the thing that she loved to bring up her 2 children really made me feel like, I didn't even have to worry about it. I was just so sure that I could do the same.
When I graduated from my MBA, we used to have campus placements. I deliberately chose, so I had the pick of the standard banks and MNCs, but I chose to ask to work on the factory floor. So there was one brave soul who gave me that job. And I was in a automobile company. And when I showed up there, I realized that I was the only woman amongst 3,000 men. There was not even at that time, what's called a woman's stenotypist, nothing. And I discovered somewhere middle of the first day or morning of the first day that they didn't even have a woman's loo. So because they never hired a woman, they didn't plan on having. So I used to take the production manager's Jeep and go to his house.
What do women not do? I want to do that. just to prove that it can be done, you know? And now when I look at it, I'm like, but most of those roles are crappy roles. I don't want to be some, you know, patriarchal, power wielding, like egomaniac. That's not what I want to be. Women can be, but I don't want to be that. Why should I be that just because women aren't like that? You know, just because society rewards alpha males, I shouldn't be driven to be an alpha male for that, you know?
There are some qualities that every woman possesses, and I really believe in that. And I think that we are highly strong and we have this spirit of independence. Some choose to bring it out, some choose to ignore it.
You know, we all try to be super women. I think that's the situation a lot of us find ourselves in, because we have choices. It's difficult. It's difficult to give so much of yourself to something and still have something of yourself left to give to other things. And somewhere that passion has to integrate with the rest of your life. And for a long time, it doesn't. It remains, or in my case, it felt like there was this whole part of my life that was opening up. And it didn't feel like it was integrating with the rest of my life. It was like a passion, a light, a vision, a tremendous call or a quest that was drawing me. And there were these journeys that I was doing for 10 days every month, and then there was the rest of my life. When I was home and trying to integrate the two.
So if you're that person who is happier at work, then please work. You know, I'm not advocating staying at home. I'm not advocating working. I'm just telling you what worked for me. For me, I was very happy to stay at home, to look after my children, to cook for them, to read for them. You know, it was fine. So there was probably, a lot of people ask me, so didn't you feel lost? So I never felt lost because I felt so happy in the company of my kids. And maybe because I always did something which allowed me my expression of creativity, whether it was workshop, whether it was thinking workshop for children, whether it was art classes which I did. I always did something which helped me to, have that creative outlet. So as long as you're happy, I feel it's fine either ways.
There is an awareness that you are slipping up, but you weigh it against satisfaction, being satisfied as a person. So that satisfaction as a person and that little bit of guilt, I think together makes a very nice makes you inventive in love. I have to manage my time carefully, and sometimes I understand with male colleagues, this kind of picking up the bag and going is little scoffed upon. But I don't care.
It is actually ever-present, moment-to-moment alertness. And at the level of practice, yes, I do meditate and do pranayam, and I sing, and I feel all these things help me still myself.
I don't sit and meditate. I don't, I think a lot in my alone time, whether it's in the bathroom or whether it's, while I'm behind the counter at my shop or whether I'm just sitting here surfing the net, I think a lot, and my stimulus comes from that as well. But I don't practice any kind of, spiritual practices.
Cycling, running, hiking, camping, all of that is being part of nature, is being outdoors, is also activity, is also massive stress relievers, gets you things out of the system and life becomes okay.
I used to deal with stress really, really badly. Smoke incessantly, drink like endless cups of coffee. But now I've started to deal with stress a little bit better. What I tend to do is just kind of take a time out and travel. Travel definitely helps me de-stress a great deal.
A great laugh a day is the best thing. It's literally like that apple. It makes everything okay. Everything is okay with one good laugh.
Daydreaming. Yeah. I can be sitting anywhere and just completely lost. And some people might call it meditation, but I call it daydreaming because I love to create beautiful worlds and just kind of get lost in them. So this, sometimes even while I'm cutting hair, I'm on another planet.
I use people to clear my head. I know for what I should go to whom.
In Hinduism, the word to describe the masculine aspect of divinity is neti neti, not this, not that. But with the feminine aspect, it's iti iti, this too, that too, like everything, you know. I think being a woman, first of all, I'm so grateful that I was born a woman in this lifetime. I would never complain about it. I love it. Like, I absolutely love it. I think I'm an emotional creature. There's this beautiful talk by Eve Ensler about being an emotional creature. I'm an emotional creature. I can sense when somebody is sad, even if they seem like they're happy on the outside. I can have amazing, amazing bonds with my friends who are like sisters. I have 6 best friends and we've kind of grown up together almost. We've been best friends since we were 16, and we used to go traveling to Hampi and Gokarna and all of that stuff. And all of our 16-year-old girly selves bus hopping across India. And I think that that's amazing that we can have such strong emotional connections to each other as women without even sometimes having to say anything.
To be allowed to be allowed to think the way I want to think, to be allowed to do stuff that I want to do, to be not even allowed. Actually, allowed is the wrong phrase. Just to be to have that freedom, and to demand it, and to not let anybody obstruct it for me. Financial security, huge amount of has a huge role to play in being independent. I mean, without money, nothing quite works. Money can buy you an experience. Money can buy you, time. Money can buy you a lot of things that help you feel independent.
But, you can be financially very autonomous and completely shackled in your mind. And I think that is the situation with a lot of women in today's world, where mentally we are enslaved to the idea that we are not complete without a man. We may be completely independent, earning, looking after the home, bringing in the bread for the kids, but enslaved to the idea that I need a male as a provider. And that enslavement is actually deeper than true financial dependence.
Financial independence for me is emotional independence. I think if I didn't have financial independence, I wouldn't be emotionally independent, and that would mean I would be a slave.
Can we make better choices if we have financial independence? I don't know about better or worse choices. We may make the same choices. Do we feel ourselves a little more empowered to make those choices? Potentially, yes.
I feel, to me, from the beginning, there's been a strong urge to be financially independent, especially coming from a family which is so financially, sorted. It was important for me to say, I don't need that backing. I will stand on my own feet, and therefore I will have a right to do what I want to do. Sense of self develops from that kind of independence.
I like the word love, self-love. And I think nurturing self-love is something that every girl and every woman needs to constantly cultivate. I think also as women, our bodies and our bodies are also so deeply connected to self-love, are constantly scrutinized. Are my hands waxed? Are my eyebrows done? Am I looking like how society expects me to look? And I think it's important to love oneself beyond all of those kind of Lakshman Rekhas that society creates for our bodies.
A lot of work goes into maintaining self, because I think it's very easy to be swayed, and it's very easy to be bribed, and it's really easy to be taken away by the glittering lights of fame and wealth. Every day it's like a battle, and I think in the last few years, I think as you grow older, or as I have grown older, I just come to a point where You are constantly battling. Here is fame, here is money, and here is absolute freedom from everything.
You know, sense of self in a way is like searching for a meaning. You know, if you look at your life deconstructed, it could be a series of random moments, random luckiness, random unluckiness, because everything is coming and going in its own speed. You can't control it. What sense of self does is that in all that randomness, there's one thing that's yours, and that stays. If you don't have a relationship with the canvas, you can't fall in love with the colors. I am the canvas in which I enjoy the way the colors sit, colors spread, or colors fade. That for me is sense of self.
I don't separate work from self-worth. I don't think there's a difference. With people who say, personal, professional, you don't derive your worth from your work, it's actually a complete bollocks. I think you do. That's a part of you. That is what you have created, that is what you have done.
So for me, writing is finally where I have found my niche. I finally found something which gives me immense joy. It took me a while to find it. But now I have found it, I'm very glad about it. I have finally found something which I want to do for the rest of my life. For me, it was all about, initially, maybe in my 20s, I had, if someone told me that I would be a stay-at-home mom, I would have laughed at them. I would have said, no way, I was this career person. I wanted to have a corporate career. I couldn't imagine giving up all that and staying at home to be a stay-at-home mom. But yet, when my child was born, I did that because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving him in a creche and, I couldn't bear the thought of someone else looking after him.
It's a trade-off. No, look, let's be clear. If you're going to do all of this, you're going to have to trade off something, right? So, example, I will trade off social outings. I will trade off watching TV or movies. I don't at all. Will it piss somebody off? It's my life. If somebody has expectations of how I'm going to run my life, that's their problem.
You need freedom and trust to do things in the outside world so that you can come back to your inner world and share it. You don't really look for it with your girlfriends, but you look for it in romantic love. I look for it from my clients. If they weren't giving me the freedom and if they weren't trusting my instincts, I wouldn't be able to do anything. So that practically is, for me, the most important thing for any growth or any relationship.
Because I was brought up with no fear about whether I could make a living from this, I'm still not afraid. I still just, I'll paint a wall and I won't care about whether I'm going to be paid for it or not. I'll travel around. I seek things that inspire me without having to see whether it's directly kind of, what the profit could be from this. So how could it translate into money? Those are not the things that really weigh me down in any way. I feel like I do things because I love them, and then everything else follows suit.
I first started singing when I was a little kid, encouraged by my father, on songs like Chura Liya Hai Tumne Jo Dil Ko. So I used to do duets with my dad, like this, in front of the family. And so he really encouraged me to sing. He bought me the harmonium I still have. And then he encouraged me to start learning classical music. So I got a smattering of classical music training in my childhood. But I have to say that when I became a journalist and I started traveling in Rajasthan, I fell in love with folk music. And that's when in my early 20s, the love of folk music happened.
Photography is something that really has saved me. When I'm very lost, I start photographing and I photograph myself. because I'm trying to see and understand to look at myself from outside versus constantly judging and analyzing and dissecting and trisecting everything about myself or what I did wrong and what that other person did wrong. And so I would photograph myself, and that helps. I think I'm a great believer in phototherapy.
So I remember I was at this Bangalore store where there were 4-5 photographers, taking pictures of me. And there were some reporters writing down what I had said. I'm like, oh my God, I cannot believe it. I feel like a celebrity. They're actually writing down what I'm saying. So it just felt amazing. It felt wonderful. And my children were there with me. My husband was there with me. Very proud they were of what I was doing.
I just don't like that word, celebrity. It's like, I'm a hairdresser, I'm a hajam, you want to call me that, I'm a barber. It's just glorified.
You need to give up that ego that's telling you that you're doing something original. And you have to be pushed to a place of humility where you say, I'm just going to do what I can and it's my offering. And then things start happening. We're all connected in a web of relationships. We're not islands. So nothing is mine. It's not my great grand vision. I'm part of a interconnected web of things that have come together. And I just have to play my part.
The most important things in my life are my 2 kids. Bar none. Bar none. And I would do whatever it took for them. And, I've had great philosophical conversations with friends where I've said, would I murder, would I cheat, would I lie? If they were in trouble, I would. Bar none. And that clarified to me how important they were. So that's one. But at the same time, I'm not a smothering mother. So motherhood means to me bringing up, hopefully, both are young adults now, bringing up 2 young adults with strong value systems, with the ability, hopefully, to think for themselves and to be good human beings. Not to harm anybody, but to give back. That's what it means.
So before I had children, I had many theories. So after I had my children, those theories have all vanished. So I think I've become more tolerant as a person once I had my own children. And I wouldn't say that there is a one rule fits all, because I think as parents, we all strive to do what is best for our children. And sometimes what you think is the best may not really be the best. See, my mom, we never expressed, I've never really, my mom has never really hugged me and kissed me and said, I love you and, things like that. So with my daughter and with my son, I do that a lot because I feel it's so important to express that love and to express that affection.
Again, in my parenting, it's based on this one thing, which is what I pursue in every aspect of my life, which is dialogue. And whatever nurturing or parenting, so all the cooking and cleaning and fetching and carrying that a mother is supposed to do, I think I do a lot of that just by talking. Because to make my life simple, some of that I've had to delegate to someone else. But when you talk, it's like you create a reality in which you are still you manage to share a lot without doing a lot together.
I don't want to have children, and I've never had a maternal instinct. I don't claim to have one. I don't want to be responsible for bringing up children. I think it's too expensive, which means it will put a lot of pressure on me to earn that money to be able to bring up a child. And there are enough people having children, so this world is okay. It's not going to, the planet is not going through any issues. The planet will survive another 1,000,000 years with many people having many kids.
Maybe just one as an observation. There are too many children in this world already. I think I'd also like to adopt a child. I have no such thing of like, oh, but what will its nose look like? Would it have my nose or your nose? It doesn't matter. There are already just way too many kids. One kid, maybe much, much later. No hurry.
So what is this need to create one of my own? Why? Because I want to see myself reflected in that person. I want to stuff my values into that person. I want to see my partner's reflection in that person, you know? I want to pick a name for it. It's like I'm playing God, you know, with another being. And I don't think that's realistic. I don't think I'm limited by not actually, you know, bearing a child. I don't think I'm limited from expressing my love for children.
I am a parent. I am a parent to so many people, actually. I am a parent to almost every boyfriend I have had. I am a parent to my lovely team that I lead in my salon, because I look at everybody there as my child and I nurture them. I have this nurturing quality. And I am a parent, many times, I feel, to my mother.
Responding to a call to be free of even the identity of being this or that, you know. For a long time, you know, I had that little whirling dervish on my dressing table. And I also used to have a mitti ka kabutar with little mitti ke kabutar next to it. And one day I just sort of looked at it and I said, my God, these two artifacts on my dressing table represent two poles of my life and my seeking and my existence. Because the whirling dervish represents this larger call to be free. And on the other hand, that kabutar and her little baby kabutars represent this need to nest. This desire that we all have as women and men, but particularly perhaps as women, to nest, to root, to develop attachments, to sustain, to nurture. It's home in the world. It's the ultimate opposition or poignant dilemma of our lives, of this and that.
I've always carved time out for myself forever. Even when I had responsibility for kids, they knew, because I used to say, this is Ma time. None of you are allowed to come in, and I'd shut the door. And I may read, I may listen to music, I may meditate, whatever. But it's just being by myself. That's important.
If I were to go to a place of solitude, I would hate it. I somehow love to be alone in a crowded place. I don't like solitude. If somebody said, go hang on the beach for 5 days, I get very restless. I need something to do. I need an agenda. All of my travels have been about that. But I greatly cherish it in a city. I think it's a great thing to have, you know, that option of wanting to be alone. It's almost like a gift, you know, like a chocolate bar that you can have by yourself and not share.
I'm not a huge solitude person. Like, I like it every now and then, but I actually really love people. I love being with people. I love talking. Like I said, I'm an emotional creature, so I really cherish relationship and conversations.
It's crazy, you know, solitude is only important to me when I'm reading. But when I go to Bombay on a shoot, and there is that delicious looking forward to-ness of coming back to the hotel and watching, you know, I don't watch TV at home here at all. I don't have a TV in my bedroom. But when I'm in Bombay, I don't know what that is. I'm up till 3 in the morning watching that. I guess that's the only solitude-ness which is decadent.
Because we live in a country that is so overpopulated. We live in a country that we have been raised in joint families. From one joint family, we get married and go to another joint family. I don't think that most Indians ever have that chance to understand who they really are or to come into their being. A lot of people, you know, say that, oh, you're depressed, or you don't have any friends, or look at the life that you lead, or bichari akeli rehti hai, 40 saal ki hai, this shit, that you hear all the time. And to me, it's the most beautiful thing ever, to be comfortable with yourself, to be comfortable knowing I have no plans. What are you going to do today? Nothing. And to actually do nothing.
Solitude and silence gives you the mind space to listen to voices which are the meeker ones in your head.
I think it's incredibly important, and I think most of us, including myself, fear it a lot. Most of us stay pathologically busy because we find solitude very, very difficult to deal with. I know I do. I think those who make friends with loneliness and how fundamentally alone we all are ultimately, and not just ultimately, even in the here and now, those people actually don't become recluses. They actually connect beautifully with the world. It's a paradox. कि जो अपने से जुड़ गया वो सबसे जुड़ गया.
Actually, I wouldn't know any different because I've been kind of living by myself since I was 19. I don't think I kind of remember life any other way. Even, yeah, if you mean with a husband or a boyfriend, then I think, prefer living by myself.
After marriage, it was the recognition that it was not just you, it was a partnership. And there had to be compromises and conversations, which it's something that I had to learn to do, right? Hard for me, very hard for me, to sort of say that this is it's not just about this is the guy I'm, knew for the last many years, and now I've married him. But we now have to sort of make decisions together, live together, make life choices which are conjoint, and sometimes that does mean that one is going to give. So for me, that was hard, and I had to learn to do it.
The word commitment itself comes with a very heavy bag to carry, commitment. I think if two people are there to basically see each other grow and be cosmic co-pilots through the universe, then one doesn't need some kind of knot to put those two people in place.
One of the huge problems with marriage, as I see it, is that it's between one man and one woman, I feel that's limiting in a big way to the kinds of relationships that we can have. I don't think every type of romantic / sexual / relationship of commitment falls so strictly into this paradigm of one man and one woman. Sometimes there are two women, sometimes there are two men, sometimes there's two men and a woman. There's different ways that we form relationships.
A marriage is a lot of have-tos. I prefer a live-in because there's a want-to. But the ceremony is quite exciting, The attention and the envelopes that you get. It's great fun. Everybody says, I have a friend who got married and he said ki chalo envelope to aayenge na, shaadi ka kharcha nikal jayega.
Marriages are very difficult things. It's very hard to find a balance, and it's not always happy. And I know every woman at some point would have had a fantasy to murder her husband to kick him out. But, when you look at it in the long run, if you have a good thing going, work towards keeping it going.
I had an arranged marriage, which was like nobody thought I would have. But I quite, in the sense, I got bullied a little bit by my parents. But I also thought that, in a way, because I've been like such a love and mush junkie, I always thought that that's the one thing that'll elude me, because I've been chasing it like from the time I was 4 maybe, I haven't had an issue with loneliness ever. But yes, in some years of my marriage, I was lonely because I had no ways to, it's almost like I have my therapy for loneliness, but if I can't get to the medicine chest, what can you do? This is good. I breathe free air. I don't feel guilty about the way I am, whatever it might be, lazy, slow, you know. I think he had an image of a wife that I could never really be. And so I couldn't really understand why would he critique the way I've been brought up, or he would critique the decibel level of my laughter. And then I realized, oh my God, it's all about actually just the door that makes me. It's not the attachments. It's really what I am.
And then cut to many years later was homeboy number one, who asked me to marry him, and that's why I moved to India. That lasted a whole 3 months. So much for arranged marriages and how they work. And I think one night we were out and he got really pissed off because I was talking to a friend like this. And so when we came home, he was really drunk and he brought up this topic. And before I know it, he was beating the shit out of me. And I was just like, is this really happening to me? Like, I'm getting beat up. It was really weird, and because I didn't expect that out of him either. It was like something that's so uncalled for, because you don't think that you are going to be that person who's going to get physically abused, right? And when that happened, and I'm screaming, and we lived in a joint family, and his parents did not come out. Nobody, his sister, nobody came to like stop what was happening. And I remember at one moment when he had stopped, I somehow felt like there was so much power in my hand. It just became like so pissed off that with all the strength I had in my entire life, it just went and just smacked him in the face. And it was so hard that he went against the wall, and he was really shocked that I had so much power, like in one hand to come up with so much force. And I think that after that, he got very violent with me. I just called, I managed to make a phone call to a friend of mine, and she came to pick me up, and I never saw him again. So that was it. To me, if someone crosses that line, there's nothing left.
This was around 2006. I was based in Pune at that time. That's when I lost my father. So that was a very difficult time for me. So because my father I was very close to. So for me that was a huge shock. So for about a year I went into depression and I didn't know what to do. I would be crying from morning to evening, and it was really difficult for me. It was a horrible place to be in, and to be very honest, even now, after each book comes out, people don't believe it, I still cry. So it's 6 years since I lost him. So you can imagine the depth. So it was something very hard to explain. It was something very hard to cope with. And it was just a terrible place to be in. It's like, I would wake up and it felt like somebody has slapped me. The pain was that much. So I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk to anybody about it. I would see other people's father and I would think how unfair that mine was taken away. Why did this have to happen to me? For me, it's something very difficult to talk about even now. So it was really a hard place to be in. And for me, that writing was born from that pain, that pain that, I need to reach out to somebody. It was a desperate place. So, and at the same time, when my children came home, I didn't want to be crying. I had to put a smiling face, I had to show them. And how long can I cry in front of my kids? So for me, it was a miserable place to be in. And for me, I still feel the loss.
Many relationships have been lost. I've had so many kinds of friends through my life that it almost is a reflection of who I am, and at each stage what I was and what I was looking for and why it didn't work. And every time, I think change has got to do, loss is a form of change. It has changed what is familiar. When it comes to falling in love, it's harder to accept it, because there's a vacuum and there's a loss and there's somebody that you invested in that didn't work out, and it feels bad for an investment to go bad. It's like, It's almost like the economy. You invest in something and then your stocks crash. And you're like, oh fuck.
I actually had a phase when I was much younger, when I was kind of like that 10 to 15 or 10 to 14 period where I was not as, la la la, love and beauty as I am right now. I was a really angsty teenager, well, not pre-teenager growing up. It was the same time that my dad wasn't around. I had two friends who passed away, both by drowning within 6 months of each other in totally different circumstances. And I was my art as well was completely different. I mean, my older art is really, really scratchy. I used to paint huge pieces of paper just out of black and red, vultures, snakes. It was really dark, like teeth and flesh and bones. And I think that entire point in my life kind of led up to a crescendo where I felt like I had indulged in that darkness almost too much. And then I had, when I was about 16 or 17, had a very powerful transformation.
रंगीली क्यों करती रंग हाँ रंगीली क्यों करती रंग हाँ रंगीली क्यों
I think I failed maybe in marriage, but I don't consider that failing, really. Give me a second. No. Maybe because I guess I never wanted to win anything, so maybe I never really, I don't know, I'm just saying. But, or maybe it's my drive that is that bloody Capricorn in me that has to focus on something and actually make it happen.
Maths, many times. I never understood that subject. The subject never understood me. It was like the worst arranged marriage. If I have to ever talk about failure, it'll only be that. Because everything else that I've failed at, so even if I failed in my marriage, there is something I've got, something I've learned. There's nothing I got from maths and nothing I learned. And when you don't learn from something, that's the failure. Not winning is never failure. Not learning is.
No, I don't think I have failed. And like I told you, the difficult part, I don't look at it as a failure because I guess failure is what you define failure as, right?
I don't think I have failed as much as I have felt that I have failed. But it's the worst feeling in the world.
Failed spectacularly. My startup. Several times. Several startups. It's all failed. Spectacular. So that's a massive spectacular failure. But would I have been here where I am if I hadn't done that and learned from it and built on it?
I have a really hard time with failure. I'm slowly unlearning it, but that's a real revelation that I had maybe like 2-3 years ago, to even accept and understand that I was making choices that were playing safe because I was afraid of failure, you know?
Bulle Shah says, Jeet jeet te umar guzari, hun te haar fakir. You spent a lifetime winning, lose just once, fakir. We are all on the treadmill of wanting to win. Jeete da mul char kaudi, hare da mul Heer. The value of victory is just 4 caudies. The value of surrender is a diamond.
The true mark of success is how happy you yourself are. And whether the things that make you successful make you happy. And if you are happy, then you're successful. If you're not happy, then no matter how much the world loves you, you're not going to love yourself.
Success is not an egg that only needs to be in your career basket. I have never looked at it like that. That makes you insecure and scared.
It's having the ability to touch so many people's lives with my words. For me, that is success. The ability that, something which is here has gone into so many hearts and changed lives. That is success today, if you ask me to describe. I feel superb about it.
I don't think money has got to do with success at all. I think the most rich people are some of the dullest, most boring, most weak people I have met. And they're completely skewed in the head. It's quite troubling. Success to me is when you strive to be a better person, and success to me is creating great pieces of work. It doesn't matter what, whether it's dance, arts, science, and you constantly keep learning and embellishing. That is to me great success. Is when you leave behind great things in the world. That is success.
Success to me is having the balls to go out there and do things that you really want to do. So I think, yes, I'm very successful because I really do not care what people say. I do not care what the consequences are. If this is something I believe in, I will go to it.
Being the best I can be at that point in time. That's success.
जो ना जाने हक की ताकत, रब ना देवे उसको हिम्मत.
Feminism doesn't mean that you're better than men. It's not even being equal to men. It is being the best you can be, and as a woman. And that's it.
There are so many women who haven't stepped out of the 4 walls of their home, who have discovered creativity and joy right where they are. And I'm not saying that they shouldn't have other options.
Good woman always places herself second. Second after family, second after husband, second after everybody else's joys and, pleasure pursuits. To me, that's really problematic. That's something that holds us back from truly fulfilling our lives for the reason that we were born for.
The more we have fearless, strong women walking around in India, traveling on their own, taking autos, taking buses, the stronger we are.
I really use my voice to spread that message, to stand out, be yourself. Not saying that you have to be drastic if that's not you. That's not what I'm saying at all. But if that is you, don't curb it because of what people are going to say, and you might not get that job because of it. No, be you. Sapna, it's like you need to understand one thing about stories. You need to live your life that every moment is a story. So you collect enough that when you have kids, you're going to have stories to tell them.
All that you're running after now will not matter. Trust me, you will be just fine. So just stop stressing, stop trying to, overachieve. It'll all fall in place. Just relax. That's what I would tell my 13-year-old self.
I would tell her to not try so hard and to love herself.
Keep your dreams. Keep your liveliness. Step back a little on your anger.
I think I would have told my pastor not to try so hard, like that it's not such a challenge, that actually it works out so beautifully. Everything works out so beautifully, and to sort of rely on that reserve of strength and courage that I already inherently have.
Do I have a checklist of things to do when I retire? No, because that looks like I'm postponing life. I'm not postponing life. I mean, that's so sad. One of the saddest things that I ever went to was a retirement party for a very senior partner in the firm. And he, at his party, said, all these years I haven't spent time with my family. Now I hope to spend time with my family. I have this piles of books that I haven't read. I hope to do, and blah, blah, blah. He had a checklist of things that he wanted to do. And I felt, when I looked at him and I said, what a sad life. That you've been postponing living because you were giving it all to just this one thing in your life. So, no, I'm not postponing my life for when I retire, I'll start doing things. I'm doing what I want to do now.
I have this dream that in my next life, I'm slim, tall, vegetarian, and believe in active sports.
Do whatever you want to do, use that perfume which you have been holding, wear that nice dress, wear those expensive heels. Do what makes you feel good about yourself, because you really don't know what tomorrow can bring.
There are all of these fears that are floating around in one's head all the time. And then there's love, that I love who I am. I love myself in all my color and my glory and all of it. And no matter how cold and wintry and white it is outside, as long as there's an invincible summer inside me, it's fine.
To be in love with your muse, with your beloved, with your own true self. The capacity that you see in yourself to be beautiful and free, to be in conversation with that, to be in dialogue with that in this way. And no one else is gaining entry into that space. Not another soul.
If I had to die tomorrow, if I knew that I was going to die tomorrow in 6 months from now, what would I do? Nothing different. Nothing different.
I think I want the space to be. I think I want the space to pursue whatever fancy might strike my mind on any given day.
A black cat. That's all I want out of life, is a black cat. And yes, independence. Yes.
It's going to get better. You don't even know what's coming. That's what I would say. It's just going to get better and better and better. And stop eating so much bread.
For women to be able to make their own life choices, for them to be able to choose how they want to live, whether it is in their dresses, whether it is in their life choices that they make, whether they want to be single or married, have kids, don't have kids, be financially independent, don't be financially independent, follow a certain passion, don't follow a certain passion, whatever it may be. It is basically the independence to make your choices. That's what it is. That's what empowerment is.